So every summer in my city, me and my friends like to make small campfires in chill, secluded areas because we don't want to drive an hour to an actual campsite and pay any campsite fees to do so. These also happen pretty spontaneously, so it's a nice last-minute hang to do. There's this one spot near my house that's located by a river that's really nice because no one usually goes there. The only thing to be worried about are bears because living in the Pacific Northwest is challenging. And my house specifically is located right next to mountains and forest. So one particular night at 11 p.m., I decided to go ahead of my friends and meet them at a spot and set things up early, because I wanted to be chilling once they all got there. The spot I get to has a 2-minute paved walkway I have to go through, and then I have to take a small trail ramping down the right side of the bridge that crosses over the river. Along this paved walkway are 2 lamps, located halfway and another at the start of the bridge/ramp down to the campfire spot. I park my car at the beginning of the trail on the street and bring my campfire stuff, like flashlight, lighter, small firewood, small shovel to dig out the pit, and other things. I get to the spot, and it's a small sandy beach kind of embankment on the side of the river, with a small waiting area for toddlers with their families during the hot summers. So I set up the chair and I get digging to the pit with only my flashlight illuminating where I'm digging. I'm also just shoveling the sand right next to me. I'm nowhere near the water, but all of a sudden I heard a loud splash. A splash so loud that it could only have come from something equally large like a 2-hand-sized rock. I'm confused because I swear I'm not throwing my sand into the water, even though I'm only a few feet away. I shine my flashlight at the water and I don't see anything. So I kind of just brush it off, thinking I'm just hearing things. But as I keep shoveling a bit more, I heard another loud splash. At this point, I think it's something falling from above, because logically something must be falling into the water. I point the flashlight above where some trees are above the river, and I don't see anything big enough to make the splash. So as I kept digging, my heart rate was kind of going up at this point. I hear a rustling past the arc where the bridge goes over the river. I quickly grab my light and shine towards where I heard the rustling. I called out a hello, but no response. In my head, if it was a bear, I should be getting out of there immediately, but there was no bear or any signs of that matter. So I tell myself I'm just hearing things now, because I've seen horror movies before and now my mind is playing tricks on me. But I hear the noise again, and it clearly sounds like leaves rustled, so I shine my flashlight over the area again, and as I focus my eyes towards the illuminated area, I see the naked back of a man hunched over. I was kind of frozen in anxiety and stress, because honestly of all things I was to see, I didn't think I'd see the naked back of a man. From the quick analysis my brain could muster up, he looked to be mid-40s, shaved but not bald, and medium-ish build, like a mix between chubby and built. As I had my flashlight staying on his back, he started to stand up, and the first thing I noticed was that he wasn't wearing any pants either. My next reflex was to pack up all my crap and get the hell out of there, because I'm piecing in my head that he must have been the one throwing things in the water to scare or shoo me away. So after using my reflexive deductive skills, I proceeded to speed walk out of there with all my stuff. I'm carrying all my things with me and briskly walk up the small ramp, and I'm on the paved path now out of the forest. I can feel my heart beating in my chest, and I'm frequently looking back to make sure I'm not being followed. I'm in Crocs, mind you, so I'm hoping that if I have to book it out of there, I'd regret not being in sport mode from the get-go. I made it to the halfway point, and a sense of relief started setting in, knowing I made it safely out of that very scary situation. But as I checked behind me for the final time, I saw something. Slowly creeping over the ramp is the naked man, crawling on all fours as if he was a primate walking. His head was positioned towards me, looking at me as if he made his way to the middle of the paved walkway. He slowly got up from his stance and started standing on his feet. After setting himself into his new position, the man started running towards me. I freaking booked it. I ran as hard as I could down the path. My flashlight jumped out of my pocket, and I lost it, but I didn't care. A whole naked-ass man was chasing me at 11 at night in a secluded forest. I looked back for a split second, and the man was still running towards me, still completely naked. He could have my flashlight for all I care. I want to make it out of this alive. I finally made it out, and I ran to my car, which is only 30 feet away from the end of the forest. I desperately get into my car like a classic horror movie. I fumbled my keys trying to get my key fob to unlock the car. I actually dropped my keys and quickly thought to myself, I'm actually dead. But I brushed off the thought and picked them back up. I get my fob in properly, unlock my doors, and throw my things into my back seat before getting into my car. This felt like an eternity, but in hindsight, this all took like 6 seconds altogether. As I tried to guide my key into the ignition, I'm fixated at the end of the paved path that I was just on a few seconds ago, waiting to see if the naked man was coming still. I feel my key go into the ignition, and I switch my sights onto the road in front of me, and I zoomed out of the area as fast as possible. After I drove away and was a good 30 seconds from the location of the horror that just took place, I got a call on my phone. It was my friends calling and asking if I made it to the spot yet, and all I had to say to them was, "Guys, do I have a story to tell you?" I'm an 18-year-old female, and have been working for a large department store in the UK for just over a year now. The story happened when I was 16. It was a late evening, around 9 p.m. or so, and we stayed open late for the Christmas rush. I was walking across the shop floor when a man brushed very close to me. I'm often in my own world at work, and this man made me jump a little. He must have noticed this because he said hello, and I responded, and he asked me how I was. I said good, and you? He nodded and walked towards the doors out into the car park. I didn't think much of this at all, but it did catch me off guard. I decided to walk to the other side of the shop. Bear in mind the floor plan is massive, and continued tidying rails there. I hear a man shout from a few meters away, and I looked up to see it was the same guy again. It's only now that I really took notice of his appearance. He had a large tattoo of a dagger on his right cheekbone, and was wearing a black jumper with his hood pulled over. He was about a foot taller than me, and clearly much older. I asked him if he needed any help, and he gestured for me to come closer to him. I tend to freeze and follow instructions in this situation, which is not exactly the best survival instinct. I naively thought that he just wanted to know which exit he needed. He asked me what my name was, and I told him. "You've got really pretty eyes," he said. At this point, I was getting a bit freaked out. I thanked him hesitantly and turned to leave, but he put his hand on my forearm. Again, I kinda just froze. "Have you got a boyfriend? Have you got Snapchat? Can I get your number?" He became more and more persistent, and I just wanted him to leave. I told him that number 1, I was working, and number 2, I'm underage. He then asked me how old I was, and I told him I was 16. Again, I don't know why I answered him, but my brain just shuts down. To which he responded, "It could work." I was really shaken up and didn't know what to do. Thankfully, one of my male colleagues walked up to me to ask a question, making this guy leave. He winked at me as he did so. Noticing my distress, he asked me what had happened, and I explained the situation. He urged me to report it, but I was hesitant as I didn't want to inconvenience anyone or get them into trouble. However, there are a lot of teenage girls that work in that shop, and I wouldn't want any of them to be targeted, so I told one of the managers. Management notified the store security and sent me off to the shop floor to get some coffee and calm down. I came back, finished my shift, and went to leave. The security guy stopped me on my way out and told me that he didn't mean to alarm me, but they had managed to track this man's car and he was parked inside of it. They said that there was a high probability that he was waiting for me, and that I shouldn't go there by myself, just as a precaution. He escorted me to my mom's car and we drove home. I'm so thankful that nothing ended up happening to me that night. I often think about what would have happened if my friend didn't persuade me to report it, and if I just went out there alone. This happened when I was 17. I was walking home from a party and it was pretty late, around 4:35 a.m. One of my guy friends had decided to walk me home since he didn't want me walking alone so late. The streets were empty and it was pitch black. As we were walking and chatting, we noticed that this man is walking up to us. When he approaches us, he started saying over and over, "Hey, I'm a good guy, I promise." He didn't seem threatening, and I remember that I didn't feel scared. And maybe because I was with my friend, who was an athletic person. So now this guy started to ask us for money to buy a sandwich. He tells us that he can't return home until 10 a.m. because his neighbor has a restraining order against him, and apparently the neighbor leaves for work at that hour. At that point, we were wondering what the hell was going on. But we decided to give him some money so he would leave us alone. We gave him around €5, which is more than enough to buy a sandwich. We then lied and told him that's all we had. Then the man looks at me and goes, "No, that's not true. You have more money in your wallet. I can see it from here." At that point, I just put my wallet back into my purse and told him I couldn't give him any more money. As we were walking away, this man once again catches up to us and goes, "Why don't you guys come with me and try and find a vending machine? And that way you can make sure I'm not spending your money on drugs." I don't exactly remember what we told him, but there was no way we were going with him anywhere. Even though I didn't feel scared or threatened at the moment, in hindsight, it was kind of creepy, and I'm glad my friend insisted on walking me home. Was this guy desperate for money, or did he have other intentions?